All right, welcome to today's edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Obviously, the big stories of today, the bigger story is Trump will turn himself in to the Fulton County Jail today. At least that is what is scheduled. We'll talk about that some, but also, obviously, the big news is the first GOP primary debate occurred last night. Who were the winners? Who were the losers? We will get into that. Obviously, 8 people took the stage last night. I think that 3 of them did what they needed to do. The others, not a horrible night, but not the night that they needed. So we will get into that with some detail and specificity so that you will be informed. We've got some good video clips coming up for you, some of the highlights, and also former President Trump sat with Tucker Carlson yesterday. We'll talk about that as well. All this and more on this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. All right, before we get started here, guys, please remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. We're on Apple, Google, YouTube, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you go to get your podcast. If you find us on YouTube and Rumble, please subscribe, rate, review, help us get to the top so we can be seen by more people. If you would, por favor, we would certainly appreciate that. All things social media, we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, True Social, and Getter at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me, and I would appreciate that. All right, so let me just give you a rundown of the people that participated in the debate last night. And I'll just give you my quick take on it. We will play some video for you, some highlights for you. As far as these are just real brief synopsis before we get to some of the actual video. By the way, today's show is brought to you by MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell at MyPillow.com has new Giza sheets. The Giza sheets are available now for 50% off. All you have to do is go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio podcast square that's at the top of the page, and enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, or you can give them a call at 800-858-0263. You're going to love these sheets. They're nice, they're crisp, they're clean, they're cool. You will absolutely love them. You will sleep well with them. And don't forget, also on MyPillow.com, there are deep discounts available for all of My Pillow products right now. All you have to do is use the promo code Carl. Click on that radio podcast square, or for some of you that may prefer to call, you can do that as well. 800-858-0263 is the number. 800-858-0263 is the number. Mention my name, Carl, C-A-R-L, and you will get whatever discounts apply to you, whatever discounts are available, which are deep discounts on everything. So everything is available. All right. So 10-year warranty, 60-day money back guarantee. You cannot beat that with a bat. And you support American jobs, American manufacturing. All right. And a good night's rest. MyPillow.com, promo code Carl. All right. Now, so here's just a quick rundown. And I got to tell you that I feel kind of weird about this podcast because I'm probably not your average analyst when it comes to the debates. I look at the things that should have, would have, could have occurred and did not. Afghanistan wasn't talked about. I think the economy should have been talked about more. I think I say this as a person that is pro-life, and I am okay with the 6-week abortion, ban. I felt like they spent way too much time focused on abortion. It should have been a quick across the board. Where do you stand? Federal issue, state issue, so on, etc. Roe v. Wade has been overturned. Make it quick, 30 seconds, boom, move on. Adios. If you don't have a good answer, too bad for you. But I just think they spend way too much time on that. They spend way too much time, in my opinion, on the issue of, actually, they didn't spend enough time on the issue of climate change. I wish they would have combined that with COVID lockdowns, climate lockdowns, just some things that I saw that I wish they would have done better. Overall, I think this was a decent debate. I think it was an opportunity for other candidates that were not named Trump to allow themselves to shine. Obviously, it was going to be a very important night, and it was a very important night for Ron DeSantis. So I'll give you my take on him first. He actually did better than I expected. For those of you that have listened to me before, you know that Governor Ron DeSantis, when it comes to governing, he gets an A++. When it comes to debating, maybe a D. He is absolutely horrible. This is the most energetic that I have ever seen him in a debate by far, by far. And I think that's good. But obviously, he has a lot to learn. In my opinion, he missed out on some cues that he could have had, taking out Vivek Ramaswamy, who we will get to next, and I'll talk about him. But overall, Ron DeSantis did a solid job. Nobody touched him, but he didn't have the breakthrough moment that, in my opinion, he needed to solidify himself as the number 2. Now, when you go on to Vivek Ramaswamy, he is competing for the number 2, at least perception-wise right now, because I want you to understand, in Iowa, in state polling, where it actually counts, Vivek Ramaswamy isn't polling well. That may change as a result of tomorrow. Now, he was basically center stage because they're going by national polls, which is absolutely stupid. The national polls are not correct. They are never correct, especially this far out. I want you guys to remember, I think it was Hillary Clinton that was leading Barack Obama in the national polling by, I believe it was over 20 points the night before the Iowa caucuses. All right. So it's just kind of senseless. Now, having said that, I think you guys know my feelings about Vivek. I donated to Vivek Ramaswamy. He is a brilliant guy. He is a fabulous orator. But the more I dove into Vivek Ramaswamy, he is a flip-flopper. So I will tell you, I do have that bias now. As someone that loved him at first, donated to his campaign, did more research, and then I was like, wow, everything that this guy says, because he says everything so perfectly, he said almost the exact opposite within the last couple of years. So I just don't know if he's a grifter. I don't know if he's in the middle of evolving, as far as conservatism is concerned. However, I'm not willing to take the risk with Vivek Ramaswamy. Having said that, the guy stole the show. He stole the show. And he stole the show because he is such a great communicator. Now, I think at times he came off as kind of a punk and bullyish, but at the same token, he got his points across. I think he insulted many that were on the stage. I don't think they came back at him in the right way. It was basically, they're all politicians. They're bought and paid for. With some basic research, you could have made the point. Whether it is completely accurate, he's talked about it in the past. His law schooling was funded by George Soros and the Soros Fellowship. All right. Is he bought and paid for? Nobody came at him in the way. Well, I shouldn't say that. I should not say that, because Chris Christie, we have a video that we'll play, regardless of how you feel about Chris Christie and Nikki Haley. They actually came at him. And I think they allowed him to shine a little bit because I think he handled himself pretty well. However, it did also put a spotlight on Nikki Haley. So when it comes to Vivek Ramaswamy, I would say overall, he stole the show. I'll play a video, just his closing arguments, and he's able to make his points, and his points are always perfect. Always perfect. It's red meat after red meat after red meat. I don't know that he necessarily has a plan. He said he would, abolish the Department of Education. DeSantis has said the same thing, but I can go on DeSantis's website and I can look at his plans. Vivek says the right thing, so we'll have to see. When it comes to Nikki Haley, I am a never vote for Nikki Haley in a primary type of guy. Now, I will say this. I would vote for any Republican over Joe Biden in 2024, or if it's a Gavin Newsom in 2024, even if I have to hold my nose. I hate doing that. I wrote a column years ago, no more John McCain's for me. Little did I know we would be in a place where it is literally authoritarians that are looking to take over the United States of America. So I would take a rhino over an authoritarian. All right. At this point, I hate to say that. I hate that we're in this predicament, but we're in this predicament. That's where we are. So Nikki Haley, in my opinion, arose as the best establishment candidate there. I think she shined, despite the fact that you had Tim Scott, despite the fact that you had Mike Pence and Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson there, and I'll get to all of these briefly. I have to admit, I was shocked. I was impressed at Nikki Haley's performance. Even though I disagree, except for one, with some of her substance, but she makes the case, and she's able to make her case clearly. And it's obvious that, at least to me, she's authentic in her beliefs. She believes what she believes. So in that sense, I think she won the establishment role. All right. Now, so having said that, when it comes to Tim Scott, I wanted to see how Tim Scott performed. I think a lot of people liked him. I got texts from friends last night, really liked Tim Scott, his nice demeanor. He seemed to be saying the right things. I thought he was virtually absent. I don't think he stood out at all. I think it was the standard Tim Scott, an inspirational story on the stage. Not a whole lot of substance, not a whole lot to stand out. So I don't know how far he'll go in this race. He has the money to go forward. I'm not sure how far he'll go. Mike Pence, listen, Mike Pence seems to me to be a decent guy. I'll be frank with you. It is very difficult for me to even listen to Mike Pence. And, again, I think he's a decent guy, no matter how you feel about the J6 thing, whether you think he could have done more, whether you think he couldn't. I think he could have sent the I forget what it's called, back to their electors in the states, just to have them relook at the votes to make sure everything was copacetic. But I'm also not mad at him for not doing it if he was truly following his conscience. He's the one that's got to answer before God. I wish he had done something different. I said it at the time. I'm not mad at him for it. But going back to his RFRA, that was a religious thing in Indiana at the point in time where he was governor. It was the whole bathroom thing, boys going into to girls' bathrooms at the time. I forget what part of that he caved on, but after that, I was just like, man, what good is your faith and talking about your faith in the public square if you're not going to stand strong when it counts? And so since that point, I've always believed that he's a decent guy, but I just don't. I don't want him as president. I don't see him as president. And I certainly don't think he had a very convincing night last night. I think Mike Pence was Mike Pence. Now, Chris Christie, and again, we'll show you these videos pretty quickly here. You had Chris Christie, who I think did what Chris Christie was supposed to do, except Donald Trump wasn't on the stage. So he targeted his campaign, it seemed to me, towards Vivek Ramaswamy. Now, again, I thought Vivek Ramaswamy performed well. I think he stood out. And if you're somebody that didn't hear of Vivek Ramaswamy, I think you heard of Vivek Ramaswamy last night. And I think that's in part to Chris Christie. But Chris Christie was classical Chris Christie on a debate stage. And I think he did what he needed to do to at least prove his bona fides, that the guy is worthy of being on a debate stage, even if you disagree with him. He is going to be able to make his points. He has a very forceful and different personality, more like a Donald Trump personality, just moderate and probably not as likable. But anyway, he had a decent performance for the guy that I believe is just in the race, seemingly to help out donors and try to destroy Donald Trump. Donald Trump obviously not on stage, so they didn't have an opportunity to do that. So they went via the way of Vivek Ramaswamy. Obviously, Chris Christie is doing well in New Hampshire. And so perhaps I heard this. This wasn't my own thought initially, but I do totally agree with it. If you want to keep Vivek Ramaswamy from rising in New Hampshire, Chris Christie had to go at him. Indeed, he did just that. Asa Hutchinson, no need to be on the stage. I'm sorry, the guy just does not need to be on the stage. Total waste of time. if that guy were to get 0.1% of the vote in a primary, at the end of the day, if he were to last through Iowa, I would be totally shocked. And obviously, I'm being somewhat facetious, but seriously, if he were to get 1%, I would be amazed. The guy should not be on stage. Former governor of Arkansas just shouldn't be on stage. And then you have Doug Burgum, who I heard. Listen, I didn't hear much from Doug Burgum last night. What he talks, when he talks, the guy knows what he's talking about. He's solid. Here's the problem with Doug Burgum. And this is funny because I believe Doug Burgum is who people think Vivek Ramaswamy is. That's my take. He's a billionaire as well. He has more money than Vivek Ramaswamy. He's very quiet. He's very cool. He's very collective. But he is a small government guy. Apparently he just wiped out, I think it was like 20% or so of the state government in North Dakota in order to get things back on track. And so the guy has detailed plans. He has good ideas. I just think in this platform, you've got to be able to show up. You've got to be loud and boisterous. He was unable to do that. And so I don't know. He can last. He's a billionaire. So I just don't know if he will. I don't know if at some point he'll pack it up and say it's not worth it. If he'll try to stay on as other people drop out of the race, so on, etc. Now, let me talk about a couple of people that weren't on stage. Obviously, Larry Elder was not on stage. He made the qualifications, but because one of the polls that he cited as having 1% in the national poll was Rasmussen, they did not let him on stage. They believe that was too favorable for that. That poll is, at least in the primary, too favorable for Trump. So anyway, for whatever reason, they didn't allow Larry Elder on. Well, I shouldn't say for whatever reason. For that specific reason, they say they didn't allow Larry Elder on. I wish he would have been on because there were a couple of things that they talked about as far as family and education. I think he would have shined on. As a matter of fact, there was a time where Vivek Ramaswamy stole one of his lines about the family. And I'm like, okay, it was a little frustrating, but I'm like, at least it's getting mentioned. Even if it's coming from Vivek, it's important that we talk about these issues. So be it. And listen, I don't think Vivek is a total fraud. I hope that I'm wrong about Vivek, but I just feel like he's a grifter. The more that I dig into him, I feel like he's a grifter. And here's another thing that I didn't say about Vivek. Here, a lot of people are praising his performance, and he did steal the show. But here's another sense that I got from Vivek. Either Trump or Vivek isn't needed. Who are you going to choose? And so in that sense, I'm not sure if he helped himself or hurt himself in the long run. I'm just not sure. So anyway, nevertheless, I digress. Let's go on to this. Gabe, honestly, just roll them, Gabe, because I've already forgotten which ones. I'll just take a look at them and I'll just offer my opinion. I believe the first video that we have is of Vivek. We have Vivek video, we have DeSantis video, we have Nikki Haley video, we have a Chris Christie video, and obviously we have a Trump video. And today is very big news. Honestly, it's a little weird to talk about this because I feel like the country is going to hell with gasoline draws on. And today is a huge day. No matter how you feel about Trump, he should not be going to jail. None of his attorneys should have been arrested and had to, been indicted over defending their client. This is a new age that we've entered into America. And I'll be frank with you. I'm sifting through it just like you guys are. I do know this, that if an election is to occur next year, then, if it's not Trump, I know he's the leader right now, but if it's not Trump, we need to pick somebody that'll pardon him. I do believe that he needs to be pardoned. And so most of the candidates, 6 of them at least raised their hands, 2 didn't. There's big news that DeSantis kind of looked down the way and hesitated, but I believe DeSantis would pardon him. But I think he's a lawyer. He looks at things logically. He's a little nerdy, so I think he is in his mind. I'm going to look at the case and everything I can do to pardon, I'll pardon. What blah blah blah, this and that. He's a little detail oriented. I wish he would jump his hands up like Vivek sometimes, but that's just not who he is. Anyway. All right, let's go ahead and let's roll these videos and get this here thing done. And and I want to close out just talking about Trump, because I do believe it's a weird day. It's just a weird day. Anyway, all right, let's roll the video, Gabe.
Mr. Ramaswamy.
I was born in 1985, and I grew up into a generation where we were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common set of ideals that set this nation into motion in 1776. And this is our moment to revive those common ideals. God is real. There are two genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to man. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution, it is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. Thanks for letting me introduce myself tonight.
Okay, so honestly, that was Vivek Ramaswamy all night, and I'm going to tell you why this is important in this age. I don't know that I believe a word that he says, all right? But the way he says things are masterful. And again, I don't believe the guy is a total fraud. I just think he's new to the conservative game. So I think he's kind of grifting. I think he's kind of learning as he goes. You heard a lot of the politicians said he's learning on the job. He knocked them. Oh, I'm not a politician. Well, you have Doug Burgum, who is a businessman, even more successful than Ramaswamy. And he wasn't a politician at one point, too. And he's turned out to be a good governor for the state of North Dakota. Great. I haven't paid that much attention to Doug Burgum, but good, I do know. I've heard enough to know that he has been a good governor for North Dakota. So anyway, but that was Vivek all night. I just gave you the closing arguments. He was willing to throw down with everybody. He had a clear message on everything. He constantly played the "I'm not a politician" card. But again, and I think he played to the Trump base, and I think he played to the social media base. This is a guy that understands entrepreneurship, marketing, social media, and he did a great job of understanding what he needed to do, and drawing attention to himself. You got to give him credit. All right, let's go to the next one, Gabe.
The nation's report card was the weakest ever for American school children, exposing chronic absenteeism, deep declines for reading and math for 15-year-olds and 13-year-olds. Governor DeSantis, you would eliminate, you said, the Department of Education. But as president, would you still have a responsibility to fix this crisis as we see it?
Absolutely. The decline in education is one of the major reasons why our country is in decline. We need education in this country, not indoctrination in this country. And in Florida, we stood up for what was right. First, we had schools open during COVID, and a lot of the problems that we've seen are because these lockdown states lock their kids out of school for a year and a half. That was wrong. We stood up. I took a lot of fire for that. I was pilloried by the media, but I stood for our kids. And as president, I'll stand for you and your kids as well. But we have to make sure that what our schools are doing is focusing on solid academics. In Florida, we eliminated critical race theory from our K through 12 schools. We eliminated gender ideology from our K through 12 schools. And we have elevated the importance of American civics and teaching our kids about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. As president, I'm going to lead an effort to increase civic understanding and knowledge of our Constitution. We cannot be graduating students that don't have any foundation in what it means to be an American.
All right, so here's what DeSantis was able to do well. I think he talked about substance well and better than anyone else on the stage in my opinion. And so that's why I don't think that people necessarily took him out. But I'm curious to see where Vivek and DeSantis fall, where they continue to line up. Is Vivek going to be able to push DeSantis ultimately out of the number 2 spot? But I think DeSantis showed where he's strong. He is very strong on substance. Here's what I don't like. Here's what I wish he would do. I wish he would do like Vivek Ramaswamy, because he gets wonky. He's nerdy. People don't understand this. I'm telling you, I've watched this guy in debates, and every time I've watched him in a debate, I'm like, just cringing for the guy. This has been his best debate performance that I've seen, but he still has much room for improvement. Say yes or no first to the question and explain your answer, or drop the one-liner first. We need education, not indoctrination. Explain what you mean by that, but drop the bomb first. I wish he would do that. He's got to learn to do that and be swifter to the point, not as wonky. I know a lot of this is personality stuff. And when it comes to, if this becomes a personality contest, then Vivek runs away with it. If it becomes substance, then DeSantis will do better in the polling. All right, now here's Nikki Haley. And guys, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I've already mentioned it. I'm a never Nikki Haley voter when it comes to the primary, but I must admit, as far as the establishment lane is concerned, she was impressive last night for the establishment side. All right. And so she showed up. She was classic Nikki Haley. I don't want her leading the free world. She's a little too moderate for me. But yes, I would vote for her, because I know I did a podcast. I'm never Nikki Haley. I would vote for her in a general election, obviously over Joe Biden. Here's Nikki Haley. One of her shining moments.
I don't care about polls. What I care about, the fact is that no one is telling the American people the truth. The truth is that Biden didn't do this to us. Our Republicans did this to us too. When they passed that $2.2 trillion COVID stimulus bill, they left us with 90 million people on Medicaid, 42 million people on food stamps. No one has told you how to fix it. I'll tell you how to fix it. They need to stop the spending. They need to stop the borrowing. They need to eliminate the earmarks that the Republicans brought back in. And they need to make sure they understand these are taxpayer dollars. It's not their dollars. And while they're all saying this, you have Ron DeSantis, you've got Tim Scott, you've got Mike Pence. They all voted to raise the debt. And Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our debt. And our kids are never going to forgive us for this. And so at the end of the day, you look at the 2024 budget, Republicans asked for $7.4 billion in earmarks. Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. So you tell me who are the big spenders. I think it's time for an accountant in the White House.
Vice President.
All right, so that was Nikki Haley, and that was I think that was her opening statement. If I recall correctly, that was her opening statement, and she did an impressive job, because I tell you what, here's part of the issue that I have with the GOP. We can't sit here and pretend like we're not to blame for some of the inflation. I get so sick and tired of that. Republicans get in office, they spend. We have not had a Republican that has come into office that has cut the size of government in God knows how long. Trump reduced some regulation, but the scope and size of government, we haven't had it. Reagan, Bush, Trump, nobody has really cut the size of government and government spending. That has to stop. It has to stop. It's never going to stop with Democrats. So for that, I give her kudos. At least she mentioned it. I really appreciate her mentioning that.
No. I didn't raise a hand.
Let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax. And we have to declare independence for it. And the reality is, the anti-carbon agenda is the wet blanket on our economy. And so the reality is, more people are dying of bad climate change policies than they are of actual climate change.
Governor Haley, are you bought and paid for?
Down by
Hold on.
in the last century.
Listen.
I've had enough.
Wait, hold on.
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
Come over and give me a hug. Give me a hug, just like you did to
The
Obama.
same type of amateur.
And you'll help elect me just like you did to Obama, too. Give me that
The
bear
same
hug, bro.
type of amateur.
Hold on.
All right, so listen, Chris Christie is good on his feet. You notice Vivek is good on his feet too. He was like, "Give me a hug, just like you did with Barack Obama, and you'll help me get elected too." But it's also true that I think the more people hear that, if I were a candidate, I would start using, "Oh, here comes Chat GPT," because he always says the perfect thing, the right thing. How is anybody ever able to do that? If you listen to my podcast, Vivek the Fake, you'll understand exactly how and why he's been able to do just that. Because the fact is, he doesn't always say the perfect thing. But again, Chris Christie had his moment. This is Chris Christie. So perhaps that's what people wanted to see. We'll have to wait and see how that shakes out in New Hampshire for him, because without Trump being on the stage, he really didn't have anybody to go after. I don't think we have any Mike Pence video. I mean, Mike Pence, Tim Scott, I just feel like they didn't move the needle at all. I think they could easily be forgotten about unless they have the money to maintain in the race. Now, here's the last that I'd like to play for you. This is Trump on Twitter, or on X as it's called now. This is Trump being interviewed, being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. And they got pretty good views last night. I think over 20 million last night. From what I understand, it's well over 100 million times it's been viewed, I believe. That's right. I'll have to check those numbers. And I believe that may be globally. But anyway, here is Trump on Tucker. There were several questions, many of which I will not get to today. So you have, why wouldn't, one of the questions, why wouldn't they try to kill you, which is the video that we'll play here. Tucker asked him, does he think does he think we're moving towards civil war? I think that was a very important question, probably the most important. I should have got that video for you, but I didn't. This had a tip from the Daily Signal. Do you think Epstein killed himself? You won't see the video of that, but Trump basically answered that. Yeah, he could have not, but your standard answer. All right. Stole it from you last time. He asked about that, keeping agencies under control. What would Trump do about that? I got to be honest. That question, I wasn't too impressed with Trump's answer. I don't know if he was just trying to be careful, given he's probably going to be arrested today. Dan Bongino has been saying something that Trump shouldn't post bond, that he should just sit in jail and create this constitutional crisis. I tend to agree with Dan Bongino on this. Dan Bongino, I'm sorry. The guy is a former Secret Service agent, NYPD. When I listen to him, I don't get to listen to him all the time, but when I listen to him and he talks about stuff concerning Secret Service, the guy is he's just amazing. I gotta give him props. He knows his stuff and he delivers his material well as well. McConnell was trying to get senators to impeach me. He says that's why he turned on McConnell. So those were some of the highlights of it, but we want to play this particular highlight because I think it is a question that needs to be answered. Here's Tucker Carlson asking Donald Trump about assassination of all things.
It started with protests against you, massive protests, right, organized protests by the left, and then it moved to impeachment twice, right, and now indictment. I mean, the next stage is violence. Are you worried that they're going to try and kill you? Why wouldn't they try and kill you, honestly?
They're savage animals. They are people that are sick, really sick. You have great people in the Democrat Party. You have great people that are Democrats. Most of the people in our country are fantastic, and I'm representing everybody. I'm not just Republicans or conservatives. I represent everybody. I'm the president of everybody. But I've seen what they do. I've seen the lengths that they go to.
All right. So, I mean, I think that's a very important question here. You see how sick and crazy the left has become. They could and probably would do anything. It's one of the reasons why I'll tell you this as I close out the show. I mean, think about this. Trump is going to be arrested. Regardless of how you feel, he's going to be arrested. You have lawyers that were defending him that are bound by the Constitution to defend their client that were arrested for defending their client over free speech rights. They're making it a RICO case where it's like they're all conspiring for this ultimate goal to overturn an election which they were trying to do within the court system. And charges are being brought by one little tiny DA in Fulton County when they were working on something that was federal from the executive branch. It makes no sense to me at all. We're just living in crazy, crazy times. And honestly, I felt like the debate, maybe better questions could have been asked of the debate. There's just something, I can't even put my hands on it completely. Between the debate last night and today, what's going to transpire with Trump, something just isn't sitting well with me. I gotta be, I'm going to be honest with you. Something just isn't sitting well with me. I can't exactly put my finger on it. Hopefully I'll do a better job when I'm sitting in for Tatum tonight. Guys, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Oh, I did. There are a couple of things that I did want to mention. I forget that guy that was shot down, Prigozhin, that was shot down. I'm curious to see what does this mean for the United States? The leader of the Wagner mercenary group, presumed dead after the plane crash, killed all on board. I know Nikki Haley talked about it some yesterday. She and Vivek. I thought we had that clip. Apparently we don't. She and Vivek got into it over foreign policy. They went back and forth at each other. And I think it's a warranted debate. He didn't want to spend any money in in Ukraine. She talked about his flip-flopping when it came to foreign policy in Israel, which is absolutely warranted. And she came at him. She is a hawk. And whether you agree or disagree, they had a good, vibrant little debate there. I think Ron DeSantis was somewhere in the middle. So it is, it is what it is. But the leader of that Wagner group that tried to overtake Vladimir Putin, dead, and everybody on board. Pretty amazing. Thousands of illegal immigrants overflowing into Arizona through open floodgates and the border wall. We're just living in crazy times, guys. That's just a few of the stories today. All right, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, please subscribe to the podcast. And we appreciate you doing so. Go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl. Bless that man. Bless that business. Bless yourself. mypillow.com, promo code Carl. Until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.